Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. Massive game tonight on the college hardwood. Top spot in the Big 12 on the line as Iowa State go to Houston. Two teams with identical conference records and holding a one-game lead over Baylor. And for the 1-seed Cougars, they put their 19-game home win streak on the line. Cyclones won't be phased. They've already beaten Houston this season. 57-53 back on January the 9th. Both teams are comfortably inside the latest AP poll top 10, which was revealed on Monday. Houston making the jump up to number 2 because of what happened with Purdue on Sunday. Iowa State making the biggest jump in the top 10. They jump up 4 spots to number 6. Let's get into some bracketology and results with the Eye on College basketball host Matt Norlander and CBS Sports bracketologist Jerry Palm. Both of these teams coming off relatively comfy wins on Saturday. Jerry, the CBS bracket preview show had the Cyclones as a 3 seed. If they pull this one out, what could that do for their seeding?
Yeah, they make a really strong case for a number 2 if they're able to win at Houston, where, Houston never loses pretty much. Iowa State, in a lot of years, Iowa State's a home court hero, but they've taken their act on the road this year. They've been very good. They're a really strong 3, but if they get the season sweep of the regular season from Houston, that's a very strong case to move up to that 2 line and knock someone off who's actually been playing well, regardless of who it is. All 4 of those teams on that 2 line are really good.
Matt, having heard all that, what are you watching for tonight in this game between these 2 top 10 teams?
A defensive battle. This could be a race to 60. Iowa State has turned over 3 teams as many as 25 times in the game so far this season. That's the kind of thing that you see rarely, on a year-by-year basis here. Houston is tracking toward having one of the best defensive teams we've seen in men's college basketball in the past 15 to 20 years. So elite defensive matchup. Taman Lipsey, Iowa State's guard on Jamal Shed is certainly something to watch. I would expect maybe Lipsey even to guard LJ Cryer, who is Houston's go-to scorer as well. This should be a fabulous matchup. I'm just going to echo something real quick that Palm said. There will be no argument against Iowa State as a 2 seed if it beats Houston. In the here and now, that will be, I think when you consider on the road, that will be the most valuable from a metric standpoint road win any team will have this season. So if it were to get the win, 2 seed, debate over. For now, there are more games to be played.
Oh, and the season sweep on top of that. All right, Virginia have won 9 of their last 10 as they sit perched on the bubble as a 9 seed. They travel to Virginia Tech tonight. Jerry, a win here won't do much for bracketology, but what would a loss do?
Yeah, a loss would definitely hurt them. Now, Virginia Tech is not terrible. They're a team that's maybe a 3-game win streak from putting themselves back on the bubble and back in contention. And, of course, that would start with beating a team that's currently in the bracket in Virginia and naturally their rival. But for Virginia, this is an important game because this is the first of 3 out of 4 on the road. The home game is North Carolina, and the last of those road games is Duke. So this is a really difficult part of the schedule for Virginia. That hot streak that they've been on is in jeopardy just because of the schedule, but they don't have a lot of room. They can't lose 4 in a row here and hope to stay in the bracket. This is a difficult stretch and an important game to start for Virginia.
Matt, it's a 3-team fight for top spot in the ACC, and with UNC on the slate Saturday, how much of this game is about getting the W and getting out unscathed?
I think there's something to that. I watched the end of Virginia's home win over Wake Forest, and it was vintage Virginia, and that might be a pejorative. They stumbled to a 49-47 victory, went 1 of 11 from the foul line, became only the 2nd team since 2008 to make as few as 1 foul shots with at least 10 attempts in a game and win the game. So, yes, avoid a trip up against Virginia Tech. From a resume standpoint, Palm is right. It's not a bad team. From a practicality standpoint, in the bigger picture, Virginia Tech just isn't that threatening this season, and I frankly don't think they have the capacity to win 3 games in a row. I just haven't seen enough to prove it there. But local rivals, we'll wait and see on it. I think that Virginia really needs to get this one to avoid, just a little bit of a backslide. They've been hot as of late. And I think Tony Bennett still found something. Guy to know, Ryan Dunn. He's one of the best defenders in the nation for the Cavaliers, and he's been a huge difference maker this season.
Moving along, Jerry, we know bracketology is all about body of work and not recency bias. We're actually discussing this before we came on, but given how UConn beat the brakes off of then number 4 Marquette on Saturday and Purdue got de-blurred by an unranked Ohio State in Columbus on Sunday, Is there a new overall #1 seed for you? Is it clear now?
Well, yeah, it is clear because UConn has had a tremendous season. They're the only team sitting there with 2 losses. Purdue and Houston each have 3, so it was a pretty easy decision to move UConn up after their performance against Marquette and what that added to UConn's resume. And then, Purdue's loss to Ohio State is a quad 1 loss, but that's a team that's going nowhere in terms of the postseason. So, yeah, it was a pretty easy decision to move UConn up. I have felt like there was something of a debate for #1 even before that. I understand Purdue's selection, and they had certainly earned it. But after this weekend, it's got to be UConn.
And what an incredible win this was for UConn in dominant fashion. And, in a bigger picture sense, for folks that might be starting to really pay attention more to men's college basketball now that the Super Bowl is in the rearview mirror, you see a top 5 matchup on a weekend, you're like, all right, I'm going to dedicate a couple hours to this game, and it's 81-53. I mean, that was a big announcement for Connecticut coming off a national championship saying we are still the best team in college basketball. I've been saying that for a month. The resume was a little bit more of a toss-up up until this past weekend there, but whew, UConn is they are an absolute wagon, and I think at this point they are better than the team last season, which I'll remind you was a 4 seed that had a dominant tournament run. UConn has had no in-season dip this season the way that the team last year did.
Matt, we saw in the AP poll that came out that Marquette have now fallen from 4 to 7. So when you look at what happened on Saturday, just quickly, where do they go from here?
This is, to be honest, maybe just throw the tape in the trash, although Shaka Smart's not really built like that. He's going to want to have his team go through that. I'm not that concerned about Marquette overall. In fact, I think it's a pretty big compliment to Marquette that it got boat raced and it only dropped 3 spots. I mean, they played the best team in the country, so I get all that. But I was expecting Marquette to maybe drop a little bit further down. Regardless, I think they'll be okay, and I still regard them personally. I still think Marquette's one of the 10 best teams in the country.
In terms of winning streaks in college hoops, UConn have won 14 straight. St. Mary's has won 13 straight, and then South Florida, who have now won 11 straight after they beat Florida Atlantic on Sunday. Jerry, South Florida are a bubble team as a 12 seed. What's their ceiling if they win out?
I don't consider South Florida to be a bubble team. They either win their conference tournament or they probably don't get in. Their strength of schedule is in the 230s. Their net ranking is in the 90s. The Florida Atlantic win is their first quad 1 win of the year. In fact, their first quad 1 game of the year. They have 3 quad 2 losses, 2 quad 4 losses. I don't see a path with the remaining schedule that they have to an at-large bid. However, they could be the top seed in the conference tournament, and there's something to be said for that. But ultimately, I think they have to win it if they're going to get into the NCAA tournament.
They're poised to win the regular season title in the American. Matt, are you surprised by what you've seen from this Bulls team?
Yes. South Florida has been irrelevant for a decade, and Amir Abdur-Rahim, who got this job, and it's funny how sometimes these things work out in college athletics with coaching hires. Amir Abdur-Rahim was the right guy for USF. He was not their first choice. He wasn't their second or third or fourth choice. That was an elongated search last spring, and thankfully they landed on the right guy who has been a proven program builder. No question, the Bulls on parade are ahead of the pace significantly, and now with the standalone first place standing, that's why they're at 12, as you know, in Palm's bracket, projecting them to be the auto bid champ there coming out of them, coming out of the American Athletic Conference. This has been wonderful. Amir Abdur-Rahim, because of this, is going to be a candidate on the coaching carousel again. We'll see if he wants to go to a 3rd spot in as many years after coming from Kennesaw State and now here, but a really, really good story. I will tag it with this. If USF does not lose another game until the American Athletic Conference Championship, and if they were to lose in that situation against FAU, I'm not saying I think they would get in or I think they deserve to get in, but I do think a 6-loss team from that conference would provide a very compelling discussion. But we have ways to go and a lot of results there as it stands right now. Yeah, they just don't have a seat at the at-large table.
I also love the fact that we got Music File Matt with a Bulls on Parade reference in that one. All right, on the other side of that Sunday game, we have Florida Atlantic, who have lost 2 of their last 4. They're now 3rd in the American. They're out of the AP poll. What happens to their seeding, Jerry?
Yeah, I've got them down to a 7. You know, they've got a really weird resume. They've got at least one loss in each of the 4 quadrants. They have 3 in quadrant 2, but they have some nice wins. You know, they beat Arizona, but that's a great win, and not their only good win. But, you know, Florida Atlantic, just that level of inconsistency has kept them from getting the kind of a seed that you would think that the improvement from last year they were at an 8-9 game. You would have thought with everybody back, they'd push for maybe a 4 seed and, you know, get a better draw. But they don't look like they're going to get there. They look like a team that's going to be stuck kind of in the middle of the bracket. If they get hot and win all the way out from here, then maybe they can move up a little bit. But the American Conference is not providing a lot of high-quality win opportunities. They're really the high-quality win for everybody else.
So to Jerry's point there, Matt, were expectations just a little too high for this Florida Atlantic team this season?
Yes, clearly, and I warned Eye on College Basketball listeners, and even when we did some HQ hits in early November about this, they took a jump up in league going from CUSA to the American Athletic Conference, and even though the AAC is now not what it even was a couple of years ago, it's still a tougher league overall. Now, it has provided FAU with fewer quad 4 landmines, I guess, and that's been a beneficial thing. And by nature of making the Final Four, FAU was really able to load up in the non-con, which has proved to be crucial because that Arizona win, which was scheduled in the 11th hour, kind of a peek behind the curtain, that game was like not supposed to happen, and then they got it done. Thank goodness they did, because you want to talk about a trump card up the sleeve there. That's a big one. So, yeah, expectations were a little bit too high. And what might be ironic, or at least coincidental, is that FAU could wind up in the 8-9 game again this year with a record that is not close to what it had a year ago when it was in an inferior conference. I'm not out on this team. It has taken some losses. The loss against USF is completely understandable. Bulls are a good team, but you know they're running out of slack here. They can still afford to lose a couple more games, but I'm still on them potentially winning a game or 2 in the tournament. Don't fade them necessarily because they're not the preseason top 10 team they were projected to be.
All right, let's talk about Kentucky's win over Auburn. Jerry, Auburn are a projected 5 seed with just one quad 1 opportunity left. Have they hit their ceiling?
Well, not quite, because you still have the conference tournament. So, and there'll be opportunities there for them to move on and pick up some better wins in the conference tournament. And those have more value because they're not on their home floor. And Auburn has just been tremendous on their home floor up until this weekend when they lost to Kentucky. But the thing, the concern for Auburn now is, you know, Jalen Williams got hurt. And thankfully, it doesn't look like he's going to miss the entire season. But obviously, he's a key guy for them as they go through this next stretch of their schedule. The NCAA Tournament Committee views injuries as they will put a little more weight on the roster, how you played with the roster you took to the tournament or you are taking to the tournament, than whatever problems you might have had otherwise. So they get a little bit of a break there if they struggle with Williams out. But really, it would behoove them to just, you know, throw that game out and just go chug it along like they have been.
Matt, you were in Auburn this weekend for that big win for Kentucky. The Tigers were 13-0 at home this season coming in, and it was a double loss for Bruce Pearl's team. As Jerry mentioned, Jalen Williams out indefinitely with a knee injury. In terms of the bracketology, we've got that set up. But Matt, we got to talk about afterwards. John Calipari wanted all the smoke after this one.
Yeah, he did. It was quite an interesting scene as he walked into the postgame press conference and just had a quick little comment prepared about how he wants the media to continue to keep attacking him and leave his players alone. I didn't quite get that. I gave Calipari and Kentucky nothing but credit in my post-game column because they deserved it. I mean, this is a Kentucky team that has been able to put up back-to-back really impressive defensive performances. No, I don't think this should be the expectation moving forward. No, I don't think Kentucky's going to turn into a top 20 defensive team in college basketball. But we have good signs. We have indications here. Going to Auburn, keep them below 60, extremely impressive. Kentucky, up until a week ago, was allowing more than 80 points per game. In its past 2 games, Ole Miss and Auburn have averaged 61. So some nice indications here. And as I wrote on Saturday night, if we get to March, if we get to the start of the NCAA tournament and Kentucky is considered a trendy Final Four Elite Eight team, well, that trend will have started with the road win against Auburn, which now ranks as Kentucky's best win of the season and really one of the better wins we've seen through all of since we flipped the calendar to 2024.
Utah are back in the tournament picture after they stunned UCLA with a buzzer beater. UCLA see their win streak ended, but Jerry, there are the Utes on the bubble as a last 4 in.
Yeah, and, that's where they've been here for a little while. They really slumped in the last few weeks to get down to that point. They had been really in the middle of the bracket. That was a much-needed win for them. They might not be in the bracket today if they don't hit that buzzer beater over UCLA. Now they've got a big game coming up at Colorado. Utah won the first matchup at home. That's 2 of the bottom 4 at the moment. So, that's a big game, and the loser might find themselves at least temporarily on the outside looking in. But these 2 teams, Utah and Colorado, really have work to do to try and stay in the bracket, and they play in a league that doesn't give them good enough opportunities to resume build while everybody else is getting those.
And you see their tournament resume, 3-5 in Quad 1, the best net win coming against BYU, who were a 10 at that time. As we take a look at Jerry Palm's other first 4 out, Cincinnati, Gonzaga, Oregon, and Seton Hall on that, and that's where we want to go next. Talking about Seton Hall, they are among the first 4 out with 4 road games versus Creighton and UConn to come. Matt, there's some good opportunity here for them, isn't there?
There's wonderful opportunity. Seton Hall right now has wins against UConn, that was at home, at Providence, Marquette, that was at home. It's got 6 wins away from home, 5 road wins. I think the Pirates are going to be in the NCAA tournament. I see where they are right now for Palm's most recent projection, but Shaheen Holloway's group is getting it done, and they are the impressiveness of how they came back down 19 against St. John's, which has fallen apart, is nowhere near the tournament conversation at this point. I like the Pirates, man. Shaheen Holloway's a really, really good coach. I mean, we know that he took St. Peter's to the Elite Eight, and then that prompted him to get the job at his alma mater. And he's like somewhat quietly, while there's been a lot of other coaches that get a lot of headlines, a lot of other teams that get a lot of buzz, and understandably so in the Big East. I trust that this team, we are going to look up on Selection Sunday after what it does in the Big East tournament and here down the regular season stretch. I think it's going to have, not only do I think it's going to do enough, I don't even think it's going to Dayton. I think we will look up, and Seton Hall will be a double-digit seed that avoids playing on Tuesday or Wednesday of the first week of the tournament.
Ion College basketball host Matt Norlander, bracketologist Jerry Palm joining us here on HQ. Jerry's updated bracket live on CBSSports.com, and you can download and follow the Ion College Basketball Podcast for more.